I went to collect Sir Gimli, but he did not want to. He did not want to protect the couch, which is unfortunate. Now he is just hanging out next to me. That's okay. We can move his camera, maybe, to better
I went to collect Sir Gimli, but he did
view
not
him.
want to.
Let me see. Think of another idea. Excuse me, sir. Bed right here. Bam. Oh, what a good boy. Went straight to his bed. All right. Good job, Sir Gimli. I will get your treat as well. All right. Get my robes in order. Absolute mess. All right. Have things situated? All right. Let's continue on. Put that. Oh, wait. I'll put this here. Okay. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the stream. Welcome back. Today, obviously, we are reading Harry Potter. Oh, you can even, like, see the book a little bit over here. That's kind of neat. Yeah, so welcome back to my stream where we read Harry Potter on Mondays. And today we are continuing that. We are going to be reading Chapter 11. We are so far already in the book. It's quite exciting. It's only taken us like 14 weeks to get to Chapter 11. You know what? That's okay. We're enjoying ourselves. We're going the slow route and enjoying ourselves. So, as you can see, we've got a lovely lion up there. What has happened in the book so far? Just a quick recap. Okay, so in our last chapter, which was the Marauder's Map, such a wonderful chapter, where Harry received a map, kind of like this. And that map showed him all of the locations of the Hogwarts castle and different routes that he could use, secret routes, to get to Hogsmeade. So he did not have a permission slip to go to Hogsmeade, and he was very bummed about that. And Professor McGonagall, whose hat I am wearing, got a little bit of green, you can see, she did not let him go, even though he asked her if he could go. She said no. So he was sad about that, but then Fred and George procured this map out of thin air. Just kidding, they had it all along. That's how they were able to do all of their tricks. That was their big secret, but they said they didn't need it anymore, and Harry needed it more than them. So that was quite nice of them. And Harry now has the Marauder's Map. It's a magical map. Not only does it have all of the secret passageways, but it also shows you where people are you can see like little footsteps on the map, and it will say like the name of the person that is walking there, and you can see different people in the castle, which is very handy and convenient. That is the main thing that happened. Oh wait, that was not the main thing that happened, actually. That was my favorite thing that happened, but then the craziest thing happened, which was that Harry and Ron and Hermione were all in a little bar, little pub or something, in Hogsmeade when they overheard the teachers talking, and the teachers said, they were telling this story with the Minister of Magic, they said that not only is Sirius Black trying to come kill Harry Potter, but Sirius Black was responsible for the murder of Harry Potter's parents, which was a big surprise that nobody knew. Okay, it was crazy. Not only was he responsible for their murder, but he was their friend. He was their friend and he betrayed them. It was very sad. Alright, I'm gonna go here and take off my delay. That is bothering me. Actually, stand by. We'll just make everything even. Whatever. Okay. Continuing on. So, yeah, very happy. Just like everything in this story, we get very happy about something and then we get very sad about something. So, such is the life of the Hogwarts students and teachers. But, without further ado, let's carry on to the next chapter. Chapter 11, The Firebolt. I wonder what this chapter could be about. What could it be about? Mystery, mystery. Dog, what are you doing? He's chewing a rope and bonking his head on the table at the same time. But he doesn't seem to care. Harry didn't have a very clear idea of how he managed to get back into the Honeydukes cellar, through the tunnel and into the castle once more. All he knew was that the return trip seemed to take no time at all, and that he had hardly noticed what he was doing because his head was still pounding with the conversation he had just heard. Why had nobody ever told him? Dumbledore, Hagrid, Mr. Weasley, Cornelius Fudge. Why hadn't anyone ever mentioned the fact that Harry's parents had died because their best friend had betrayed them? Ron and Hermione watched Harry nervously all through dinner, not daring to talk about what they'd overheard, because Percy was sitting close by them. When they went upstairs to the crowded common room, it was to find Fred and George had set off half a dozen dung bombs in a fit of end-of-term high spirits. Harry, who didn't want Fred and George asking him whether he'd reach Hogsmeade or not, sneaked quietly up to the empty dormitory and headed straight to his bedside cabinet. He pushed his books aside and quickly found what he was looking for, the leather-bound photo album Hagrid had given him 2 years ago, which was full of wizard pictures of his mother and father. He sat down on his bed, drew the hangings around him, and started turning the pages, searching until he stopped on a picture of his parents' wedding day. There was his father, waving up at him, beaming, the untidy black hair Harry had inherited standing up in all directions. There was his mother, alight with happiness, arm in arm with his dad. And there, that must be him, their best man. Harry had never given him a thought before. If he hadn't known it was the same person, he would have never guessed it was Black in this old photograph. His face wasn't sunken and waxy, but handsome, full of laughter. Had he already been working for Voldemort when this picture had been taken? Was he already planning the deaths of the two people next to him? Did he realize he was facing 12 years in Azkaban, 12 years which would make him unrecognizable? But the Dementors don't affect him, Harry thought, staring into the handsome, laughing face. He doesn't have to hear my mom screaming if they get too close. Harry slammed the album shut, reached over and stuffed it back into his cabinet, took off his robes and glasses and got into bed, making sure the hangings were hiding him from view. The dormitory door opened. "Harry?" said Ron's voice uncertainly. But Harry lay still, pretending to be asleep. He heard Ron leave again and rolled over on his back, his eyes wide open. A hatred such as he'd never known before was coursing through Harry like poison. He could see Black laughing at him through the darkness, as though somebody had pasted the picture from the album over his eyes. He watched as though somebody was playing him a piece of film. Sirius Black blasting Peter Pettigrew, who resembled Neville Longbottom, into 1,000 pieces. He could hear, though he had no idea what Black's voice might sound like, a low, excited mutter. "It has happened, my lord. The Potters have made me their secret keeper. And then came another voice, laughing shrilly, the same laugh that Harry heard inside his head whenever Dementors grew near. "Harry, you look terrible." Harry hadn't got to sleep until daybreak. He had awoken to find the dormitory deserted, dressed, and gone down the spiral staircase to a common room that was completely empty, except for Ron, who was eating a peppermint toad and massaging his stomach, and Hermione, who had spread her homework over 3 tables. "Where is everyone?" said Harry. "Gone. It's the first day of the holidays, remember?" said Ron, watching Harry closely. "It's nearly lunchtime. I was going to come and wake you up in a minute." Alright, let's do a little scoochie here. Scooch a little closer to you. Come closer. Closer. Too close. Okay. Right. Nothing else to see on that second page, but here's just the drawing on this page. Just some lovely winter trees. Okay. A handy wand. Harry slumped into a chair next to the fire. Snow was still falling outside the windows. Crookshanks was spread out in front of the fire like a large ginger rug. "You really don't look well, you know," Hermione said, peering anxiously into his face. "I'm fine," said Harry. "Harry, listen," said Hermione, exchanging a look with Ron. "You must be really upset about what we heard yesterday, but the thing is, you mustn't go do anything stupid." "Like what?" said Harry. "Like trying to go after Black," said Ron sharply. Harry could tell they had rehearsed this conversation while he had been asleep. He didn't say anything. "You won't, will you, Harry?" said Hermione. "Because Black's not worth dying for," said Ron. Harry looked at them. They didn't seem to understand at all. "Do you know what I see and hear every time a Dementor gets too near to me?" Ron and Hermione shook their heads, looking apprehensive. "I can hear my mom screaming and pleading with Voldemort. And if you heard your mom screaming like that, just about to be killed, you wouldn't forget in a hurry. And if you found out someone who was supposed to be a friend of hers betrayed her and sent Voldemort after her..." "There's nothing you can do," said Hermione, looking stricken. "The Dementors will catch Black and he'll go back to Azkaban and serve him right." "You heard what Fudge said. Black isn't affected by Azkaban like normal people are. It's not a punishment for him like it is for the others." "So what are you saying?" said Ron, looking very tense. "You want to kill Black or something?" "Don't be silly," said Hermione in a panicky voice. "Harry doesn't want to kill anyone. Do you, Harry?" Again, Harry didn't answer. He didn't know what he wanted to do. All he knew was that the idea of doing nothing while Black was at liberty was almost more than he could stand. "Malfoy knows," he said abruptly. "Remember what he said to me in Potions?" "Welcome. Thank you for the follow. And welcome to Ravenclaw." "If it was me, I'd hunt him down myself. I'd want revenge." "You're going to take Malfoy's advice instead of ours?" said Ron furiously. "Listen, you know what Pettigrew's mother got back after Black had finished with him? Dad told me. The Order of Merlin, first class, and Pettigrew's finger in a box. That was the bit of him that they could find. Black's a madman, Harry, and he's dangerous. Malfoy's dad must have told him, said Harry, ignoring Ron. He was right in Voldemort's inner circle. Say you know who, will you? Interjected Ron angrily. So obviously, Malfoy knew Black was working for Voldemort. And Malfoy loved to see you blown into a million pieces like Pettigrew. Get a grip! Malfoy's just hoping you'll get yourself killed before he has to play you in Quidditch. Harry, please, said Hermione, her eyes now shining with tears. Please be sensible. Black did a terrible, terrible thing. But don't put yourself in danger. It's what Black wants. Oh, Harry, you'd be playing right into Black's hands if you went looking for him. Your mom and dad wouldn't want you to get hurt, would they? They'd never want you go looking for Black. Hi, Lock Survival. Welcome. They're very good. Have you never read them at all? Have you seen the movies? Here is a picture. Oh, I feel like I need to back up a little bit. Here, move that. This is them in the snow. Lovely winter photo. I'll never know what they'd have wanted, because thanks to Black, I've never spoken to them, said Harry shortly. There was a silence in which Crookshanks stretched luxuriously, flexing his claws. Ron's pocket quivered. Look, said Ron, obviously casting around for a change of subject. It's the holidays. It's nearly Christmas. Let's go down and see Hagrid. We haven't visited him for ages. No, said Hermione quickly. Harry isn't supposed to leave the castle, Ron. Yeah, let's go, said Harry, sitting up. And I can ask him how come he never mentioned Black when he told me all about my parents. Further discussion of Sirius Black plainly wasn't what Ron had in mind. Or we could have a game of chess, he said hastily, or gobstones. Percy left a set. No, let's visit Hagrid, said Harry firmly. You don't find the books to buy anywhere. Well, they're on Amazon. Amazon, I think, is the best place to get them. Yeah, that's where I would get them. Amazon, somewhere online. I got this one from Barnes & Noble. That's a book chain here in America. I don't know if it's everywhere, but it's in my state. So they got their cloaks from their dormitories and set off through the portrait hole. Stand and fight, ye yellow-bellied mongrels! Down through the empty castle and out through the oak front doors. That was... what's his name? Sir Cala blah blah blue. He was one of the chapters, I think. Sir Calloway? No, that's not right. Sir something. I think he was the name of a chapter at one point. No, I guess not. But he was in the chapter. He was in The Flight of the Fat Lady, 107. He would be probably towards the end. Nope, not Colin. That's the other kid. Peeves. Oh yeah, Peeves came when the fat lady got attacked. I don't know. I'm not seeing his name anywhere. If somebody remembers the name of the knight, let me know. But I do not see it. Oh well. Okay. His name's not that important anyway. I was just curious. So yeah, that's the knight who's now taking over for the fat lady. That's who was talking there. 'Cause you're in Germany? Do they not have Amazon in Germany? Perhaps that is why. Do Death Eaters actually eat death and people? No, they eat their souls. And all of their happiness. Yeah. They eat your souls and everything worth living for. Okay. They made their way slowly down the lawn, making a shallow trench in the glittering, powdery snow, their socks and the hem of their cloaks soaked and freezing. The forbidden forest looked as though it had been enchanted, each tree smattered with silver, and Hagrid's cabin looked like an iced cake. Ron knocked, but there was no answer. "He's not out, is he?" said Hermione, who was shivering under her cloak. Ron had his ear to the door. "There's a weird noise," he said. "Listen, is that Fang?" Harry and Hermione put their ears to the door, too. From inside the cabin came a series of low, throbbing moans. "Interesting. Think we'd better go and get someone?" said Ron nervously. "Hagrid!" called Harry, thumping the door. "Hagrid, are you in there?" There was a sound of heavy footsteps, then the door creaked open. Hagrid stood there with his eyes red and swollen, tears splashing down the front of his leather waistcoat. "You've heard!" he bellowed, and he flung himself into Harry's neck. Hagrid, being at least twice the size of a normal man, this was no laughing matter. Harry, about to collapse under Hagrid's weight, was rescued by Ron and Hermione, who each seized Hagrid under an arm and heaved him, Harry helping back into the cabin. Hagrid allowed himself to be steered into a chair and slumped over the table. Sobbing uncontrollably, his face glazed with tears, which dripped down into his tangled beard. "Hagrid, what is it?" said Hermione, aghast. Harry spotted an official-looking letter lying open on the table. "What's this, Hagrid?" Hagrid's sobs redoubled, but he shoved the letter towards Harry, who picked it up and read aloud. "Dear Mr. Hagrid, further to our inquiry into the attack by a hippogriff on a student in your class, we have accepted the assurances of Professor Dumbledore that you bear no responsibility for the regrettable incident." "Well, okay, that's okay, Hagrid," said Ron, clapping Hagrid on the shoulder. But Hagrid continued to sob and waved one of his gigantic hands, inviting Harry to read on. "However, we must register our concern about the hippogriff in question. We've decided to uphold the official complaint of Mr. Lucius Malfoy, and this matter will therefore be taken to the Committee of the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. The hearing will take place on April 20th, and we ask you to present yourself and your hippogriff at the committee's offices in London on that date. In the meantime, the hippogriff should be kept tethered and isolated. Yours in fellowship." There followed a list of the school governors. "Oh," said Ron. But you said Buckbeak isn't a bad hippogriff, Hagrid. I bet he'll get off." "You don't know them gargoyles at the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures," choked Hagrid, wiping his tears on his sleeve. "They've got it in for creatures." A sudden sound from the corner of Hagrid's cabin made Harry, Ron, and Hermione whip around. Buckbeak, the hippogriff, was lying in the corner, chomping on something that was oozing blood all over the floor. "I couldn't leave him tied out there in the snow," choked Hagrid, "all on his own at Christmas." Harry and Ron and Hermione looked at each other. They had never seen eye to eye with Hagrid about what he called interesting creatures, and other people called terrifying monsters. On the other hand, there didn't seem to be any particular harm in Buckbeak. In fact, by Hagrid's usual standards, he was positively cute. "You'll have to put up a good, strong defense, Hagrid," said Hermione, sitting down and laying a hand on Hagrid's massive forearm. "I'm sure you can prove Buckbeak is safe." "Won't make no difference," sobbed Hagrid. "Them disposal devils, they're all in Lucius Malfoy's pocket, scared of him. And if I lose the case, Buckbeak..." Hagrid drew his fingers swiftly, across his throat, then gave a great wail and lurched forwards, his face in his arms. "What about Dumbledore, Hagrid?" said Harry. He's done more than enough for me already, groaned Hagrid. Got enough on his plate? What with keeping them Dementors out of the castle? And Sirius Black looking around. Ron and Hermione looked quickly at Harry as though expecting him to start berating Hagrid for not telling him the truth about Black. But Harry couldn't bring himself to do it. Not now that he saw Hagrid so miserable and scared. Listen, Hagrid, he said. Oh, sorry, that was not Hermione. Listen, Hagrid, he said. You can't give up. Hermione's right. You just need a good defense. You can call us as witnesses. I'm sure I've read about a case of a hippogriff baiting, said Hermione thoughtfully, where the hippogriff got off. I'll look it up for you and see exactly what happened. Hagrid howled still more loudly. Harry and Hermione looked at Ron to help them. Shall I make a cup of tea? Said Ron. Harry stared at him. It's what my mom does whenever someone's upset, Ron muttered, shrugging. It's what Sheldon does, too, from Big Bang Theory. At last, many more assurances of help. After many more assurances of help, with a steaming mug of tea in front of him, Hagrid blew his nose on a handkerchief the size of a tablecloth and said, You're right. I can't afford to go to pieces. Gotta pull myself together. Fang the boarhound came timidly out from under the table and laid his head on Hagrid's knee. I've not been myself lately, said Hagrid, stroking Fang with one hand and mopping his face with the other. Worried about Buckbeak and no one liking me classes. We do like them, lied Hermione at once. Yeah, they're great, said Ron, crossing his fingers under the table. How are the flabberworms? Dead, said Hagrid gloomily. Too much lettuce. Oh, no, said Ron, his lip twitching. And them Dementors make me feel ruddy tabbly and all, said Hagrid with a sudden shudder. Gotta walk past them every time I want a drink in the Three Broomsticks. It's like being back in Azkaban. He fell silent, gulping his tea. Harry, Ron, and Hermione watched him breathlessly. They had never heard Hagrid talk about his brief spell in Azkaban before. After a brief pause, Hermione said timidly, Is it awful in there, Hagrid? You have no idea, said Hagrid quietly. Never been anywhere like it. Thought I was going mad. Kept going over horrible stuff in me mind. That day I got expelled from Hogwarts. Day my dad died. Day I had to let Norbert go. Yeah. You can really remember who you are after a while. And you can see the... Wait, that's like him saying can't, but he doesn't say it very clearly, so I'll try to say it better. You can't really remember who you are after a while. It's like a southern Hagrid. Man, I really need to figure out what this accent is that Hagrid has. You can't really remember who you are after a while. And you can't see the point of living after all. I used to hope I'd just die in my sleep. When they let me out, it was like being born again. Best feeling in the world. Everything came flooding back. Mind the Dementors weren't keen on letting me go. But you were innocent, said Hermione. Hagrid snorted. Think that matters to them? They don't care. Long as they've got a couple hundred humans stuck in there with them so they can leech all the happiness out of them. They don't give a damn who's guilty and who's not. Hagrid went quiet for a moment, staring into his tea. Then he said quietly, Thought of just letting Buckbeak go. Trying to make him fly away. But how do you explain to a hippogriff that it's got to go into hiding? And I'm scared of breaking the law. He looked up at them, tears leaking down his face again. I don't ever want to go back to Azkaban. The trip to Hagrid's, though far from fun, had nevertheless had the effect Ron and Hermione had hoped. Though Harry had by no means forgotten about Black. He couldn't brood constantly on revenge if he wanted to help Hagrid with his case against the Committee for Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. He, Ron, and Hermione went to the library the next day and returned to the empty common room laden with books which might help prepare defense for Buckbeak. three of them sat in front of the roaring fire, slowly turning the pages of dusty volumes about famous cases of marauding beasts, speaking occasionally when they ran across something relevant. Here's something. There was a case in 1722, but the hippogriff was convicted. Ugh. Look what they did to it. That's disgusting. This might help. Look, a manticore savaged someone in 1296, and they let the manticore off. Oh, no, that was only because everyone was too scared to go near it. Meanwhile, in the rest of the castle, the usual magnificent Christmas decorations had been put up, despite the fact that hardly any of the students remained to enjoy them. Thick streamers of holly and mistletoe were strung along the corridors. Mysterious light shone from the inside every suit of armor, and the great hall was filled with its usual 12 Christmas trees, glittering with golden stars. A powerful and delicious smell of cooking pervaded the corridors, and by Christmas Eve it had grown so strong that even Scabbers poked his nose out of the shelter of Ron's pocket to sniff hopefully at the air. On Christmas morning, Harry was woken by Ron throwing his pillow at him. Oi, presents! Harry reached for his glasses and put them on, squinting through the semi-darkness to the foot of his bed, where a small heap of parcels had appeared. Ron was already ripping the paper off his own presents. Another jumper from Mom, maroon again. See if you got one. Harry had. Mrs. Weasley had sent him a scarlet jumper with the Gryffindor lion knitted on the front. Here it is, the Gryffindor lion, knitted on my front of my robe. Look at that. It's kind of far. You can't see it that well, but you get the idea. Okay. Also, a dozen home-baked mince pies, some Christmas cake, and a box of nut brittle. I wonder what Christmas cake is in England. And mince pies, I don't remember what those are, but I think they're gross. That's all I remember. As he moved all these things aside, he saw a long, thin package lying underneath. What's that? Said Ron, looking over, freshly Start again. What's that? Said Ron, looking over, a freshly unwrapped pair of maroon socks in his hand. Don't know. Harry ripped the parcel open and gasped as a magnificent, gleaming broomstick rolled out onto his bedspread. Ron dropped his socks and jumped off his bed for a closer look. I don't believe it, he said hoarsely. It was a firebolt, identical to the dream broom Harry had gone to see every day in Diagon Alley. Its handle glittered as he picked it up. He could feel it vibrating and let go. It hung in midair, unsupported, at exactly the right height for him to mount it. His eyes moved from the golden registration number at the top of the handle right down to the perfectly smooth, streamlined birch twigs that made up the tail. Who sent it to you? Said Ron in a hushed voice. Look and see if there's a card, said Harry. Ron ripped apart the firebolt's wrappings. Nothing! Blimey, who'd spend that much on you? Well, said Harry, feeling stunned, I'm betting it wasn't the Dursleys. I bet it was Dumbledore, said Ron, now walking round and round the firebolt, taking in every glorious inch. He sent you the invisibility cloak anonymously. Anonymously? That was my dad's, though, said Harry. Dumbledore was just passing it on to me. He wouldn't spend hundreds of galleons on me. He can't go giving students stuff like this. That's why he wouldn't say it was from him, said Ron, in case some git like Malfoy said it was favoritism. Hey, Harry. Ron gave a great whoop of laughter. Malfoy, wait till he sees you on this. He'll be sick as a pig. This is an international standard broom, this is. I can't believe this, Harry muttered, running a hand along the firebolt, whilst Ron sank into Harry's bed, laughing his head off at the thought of Malfoy. Who? I know, said Ron, controlling himself. I know, it could have been Lupin. What? Said Harry, now starting to laugh himself. Lupin, listen, if he had this much gold, he'd be able to buy himself some new robes. Yeah, but he likes you, said Ron. And he was away when your Nimbus got smashed. And he might have heard about it and decided to visit Diagon Alley and get this for you. What do you mean he was away? Said Harry. He was ill when I was playing in that match. Well, he wasn't in the hospital wing, said Ron. I was there, cleaning out the bedpans on that detention from Snape, remember? Interesting. I never noticed that before. But how curious that Snape would assign Ron to that very specific detention, knowing that Professor Lupin was going to be out sick, and that would mean Ron would know that he wasn't in the hospital wing. Snape is very smart. He's very devilish in his cleverity. Okay. He wasn't in the hospital wing. I was there cleaning out the bedpans on that detention from Snape, remember? Harry frowned at Ron. I can't see Lupin affording something like this. What are you two laughing about? Hermione had just come in, wearing her dressing gown and carrying Crookshanks, who was looking very grumpy, with a string of tinsel tied around his neck. Don't bring him in here, said Ron, hurriedly snatching Scabbers from the depths of his bed and stowing him in his pajama pocket. But Hermione wasn't listening. She dropped Crookshanks onto Seamus's empty bed and stared open-mouthed at the firebolt. Oh, Harry, who sent that to you? No idea, said Harry. There wasn't a card or anything in it. To his great surprise, Hermione did not appear either excited or intrigued by this news. On the contrary, her face fell and she bit her lip. What's the matter with you? Said Ron. I don't know, said Hermione slowly. But it is a bit odd, isn't it? I mean, this is supposed to be quite a good broom, isn't it? Ron sighed exasperatedly. It's the best broom there is, Hermione, he said. So it must have been really expensive. Probably cost more than all the Slytherin's brooms put together, said Ron happily. Well, who'd send Harry something as expensive as that? And not even tell him they sent it, said Hermione. Who cares? Said Ron impatiently. Listen, Harry, can I have a go on it? Can I? I don't think anyone should ride that broom just yet, said Hermione shrilly. Harry and Ron looked at her. What do you think Harry's gonna do with it? Sweep the floor? Said Ron. But before Hermione could answer, Crookshanks sprang from Seamus's bed right at Ron's chest. Get him out of here! Ron bellowed as Crookshanks' claws ripped his pajamas and Scabbers attempted a wild escape over his shoulder. Ron seized Scabbers by the tail and aimed a misjudged kick at Crookshanks, which hit the trunk at the end of Harry's bed, knocking it over and causing Ron to hop on the spot, howling with pain. Crookshanks' fur suddenly stood on end. A shrill, tiny whistle was filling the room. The pocket sneakoscope had been dislodged from Uncle Vernon's old socks and was whirling and gleaming on the floor. I forgot about that, Harry said, bending down and picking up the sneakoscope. I never wear those socks if I can help it. The sneakoscope whirled and whistled in his palm. Crookshanks was hissing and spitting at it. You better take that cat out of here, Hermione, said Ron furiously. He was sitting on Harry's bed, nursing his toe. Can't you shut that thing up? He added to Harry as Hermione strode out of the room, Crookshanks' yellow eyes still fixed maliciously on Ron. Harry stuffed the sneakoscope back inside the socks and threw it back into his trunk. Water break, please. Harry stuffed the sneakoscope back inside the socks and threw it back into his trunk. All that could be heard now was Ron's stifled moans of pain and rage. Scabbers was huddled in Ron's hands. It had been a while since Harry had seen him out of Ron's pocket, and he was unpleasantly surprised to see that Scabbers, once so fat, was now very skinny. Patches of fur seemed to have fallen out too. "He's not looking too good, is he?" Harry said. "It's stress," said Ron. "He'd be fine if that stupid great Firebolt left him alone." But Harry, remembering what the woman at the magical menagerie had said about rats only living 3 years, couldn't help feeling that unless Scabbers had powers he had never revealed, he was reaching the end of his life. And despite Ron's frequent complaints that Scabbers was both boring and useless, he was sure Ron would be very miserable if Scabbers died. Oh, his little rat Scabbers. Poor little guy. Christmas spirit was definitely thin on the ground in the Gryffindor common room that morning. Hermione had shut Crookshanks in her dormitory, but was furious with Ron for trying to kick him. Ron was still fuming about Crookshanks' fresh attempt to eat Scabbers. Harry gave up trying to get them to talk to each other and devoted himself to examining the Firebolt, which he had brought down to the common room with him. For some reason, this seemed to annoy Hermione as well. She didn't say anything, but she kept looking darkly at the broom as though it, too, had been criticizing her cat. At lunchtime, they went down to the Great Hall to find that the house tables had been moved against the walls again, and that a single table set for 12 stood in the middle of the room. Professors Dumbledore, McGonagall, Snape, Sprout, and Flitwick were there along with Filch, the caretaker, who had taken off his usual brown coat and was wearing a very old, rather moldy-looking tailcoat. There were only 3 other students, 2 extremely nervous-looking first-years and a sullen-faced Slytherin 5th year. Merry Christmas! We're going back a little bit. Merry Christmas, said Dumbledore, as Harry, Ron, and Hermione approached the table. As there are so few of us, it seems foolish to use the house tables. Sit down, sit down. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat down side by side at the end of the table. Crackers, said Dumbledore enthusiastically, offering the end of a large silver one to Snape, who took it reluctantly and tugged. Oh wait, let me show you a picture of Scabbers. Not looking too hot. He's not fat anymore. He's all skinny. Crookshanks, who was looking very grumpy. Wait, sorry, that was the other page. Back over here. All right, to Dumbledore and Snape taking some crackers. With a bang like a gunshot, the cracker flew apart to reveal a large pointed witch's hat topped with a stuffed vulture. Harry, remembering the boggart, caught Ron's eye, and they both grinned. And Snape's mouth thinned, and he pushed the hat towards Dumbledore, who swapped it for his wizard's hat at once. This is a lovely hat. Look at that. Dumbledore wearing a vulture hat. These poppers are cool. They don't have, when they say crackers, they're talking about poppers, which are those Christmas things that you pull apart and have little toys and candy in them. Except for, in this case, they have vulture hats. Makes sense? Okay. Tuckin', he advised the table, beaming around. As Harry was helping himself to roast potatoes, the doors of the Great Hall opened again. It was Professor Trelawney, gliding towards them as though on wheels. She had put on a green sequined dress in honor of the occasion, making her look more than ever like a glittery, oversized dragonfly. Glittering, oversized dragonfly. Sybil, this is a pleasant surprise, said Dumbledore, standing up. I've been crystal gazing, Headmaster, said Professor Trelawney in her mistiest, most faraway voice. And, to my astonishment, I saw myself abandoning my solitary luncheon and coming to join you. Who am I to refuse the promptings of fate? I at once hastened from my tower, and I do beg you to forgive my lateness." "Certainly, certainly," said Dumbledore, his eyes twinkling. "Let me draw you up a chair." And he did indeed draw a chair in mid-air with his wand, which revolved for a few seconds before falling with a thud between Professor Snape and McGonagall. Professor Trelawney, however, did not sit down. Her enormous eyes had been roving around the table, and she suddenly uttered a kind of soft scream. "I dare not, Headmaster! If I join the table, we shall be 13! Nothing could be more unlikely! Nothing could be more unlucky! Nothing! Never forget that when 13 dine together, the first to rise will be the first to die." "We'll risk it, Sybil," said Professor McGonagall impatiently. "Do sit down. The turkey's getting stone cold." Professor Trelawney hesitated, then lowered herself into the empty chair, eyes shut and mouth clenched tight, as though expecting a thunderbolt to hit the table. Professor McGonagall poked a large spoon into the nearest tureen. "Tripe, Sybil." Professor Trelawney ignored her, eyes open again. She looked around once more and said, "But where is dear Professor Lupin?" "I'm afraid the poor fellow is ill again," said Dumbledore, indicating that everybody should start serving themselves. "Most unfortunate that it should happen on Christmas Day." "But surely you already knew that, Sybil," said Professor Trelawney, her eyebrows raised. Professor Trelawney gave Professor McGonagall a very cold look. "Certainly, I knew." Wait, sorry, that's not her voice. "Certainly, I knew, Minerva," she said quietly. "But one does not parade the fact that one is all-knowing. I frequently act as though I am not possessed of the inner eye, so as not to make others nervous." "That explains a great deal," said Professor McGonagall tartly. Professor Trelawney's voice suddenly became a good deal less misty. "If you must know, Minerva, I have seen that poor Professor Lupin will not be with us for very long. He seems aware himself that his time is short. He positively fled when I offered to crystal gaze for him." "Imagine that," said Professor McGonagall dryly. "I doubt," said Dumbledore in a cheerful but slightly raised voice, which put an end to Professor McGonagall and Professor Trelawney's conversations, "that Professor Lupin is in any immediate danger. Severus, you've made the potion for him again?" "Yes, Headmaster," said Snape. "Good," said Dumbledore. "Then he should be up and about in no time. Derek, have you had any of these chipolatas? They're excellent." The first-year boy went furiously red on being addressed directly by Dumbledore and took a platter of sausages with trembling hands. I don't know why, but Derek just doesn't seem like a wizard name. I mean, yes, Harry is not necessarily a wizard name. Ron is not necessarily a wizard name, but Derek just doesn't seem to fit. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see a Derek and you go, "Oh yeah, that guy, he's a wizard, he's going to Hogwarts." No, you don't. You just don't. Derek. What a name. No wonder that character never became big. Classic Derek. Anyway. I don't know what a chipolata is, but is it kind of like a chipotle? Professor Trelawney behaved almost normally until the very end of Christmas dinner. 2 hours later, full to bursting with Christmas dinner and still wearing their cracker hats, Harry and Ron got up first from the table, and she shrieked loudly, "My dears! Which of you left his seat first? Which?" "Don't know," said Ron, looking uneasily at Harry. "I doubt it will make much difference," said Professor McGonagall coldly, "unless a mad axe man is waiting outside the doors to slaughter the first into the entrance hall." Even Ron laughed. Professor Trelawney looked highly affronted. "Coming?" Harry said to Hermione. "No," Hermione muttered. "I want a quick word with Professor McGonagall. Probably trying to see if she can take any more classes, yawned Ron as they made their way to the entrance hall, which was completely devoid of any Mad Axe men. When they reached the portrait hole, they found Sir Cadogan. There we go! I could have just waited. It was there. Sir Cadogan, enjoying a Christmas party with a couple of monks, several previous headmasters of Hogwarts, and his fat pony. He pushed up his visor and toasted them with a flagon of mead. Merry Christmas, password? Scurvy cur, said Ron. And same to you, sir, roared Sir Cadogan, as the painting swung forward to admit them. Harry went straight up to the dormitory, collected his Firebolt and the broomstick servicing kit Hermione had given him for his birthday, brought them downstairs, and tried to find something to do on the Firebolt. However, there was no bent twigs to clip, and the handle was so shiny it seemed pointless to polish it. He and Ron simply sat admiring it from every angle until the portrait hole opened, and Hermione came in, accompanied by Professor McGonagall. Though Professor McGonagall was head of Gryffindor House, Harry had only seen her in the common room once before, and that had been to make a very grave announcement. He and Ron stared at her, both holding the Firebolt. Hermione walked around them, sat down, picked up the meatiest book, and hid her face behind it. So, that's it, is it? Said Professor McGonagall, beatily, walking over to the fireside and staring at the Firebolt. Miss Granger has just informed me that you have been sent a broomstick, Potter. Harry and Ron looked around at Hermione. They could see her forehead reddening over the top of her book, which was upside down. May I? Said Professor McGonagall, but she didn't wait for an answer before pulling the Firebolt out of her hands. She examined it carefully from handle to twig ends. And there was no note at all, Potter? No card? No message of any kind? No, said Harry blankly. I see, said Professor McGonagall. Well, I'm afraid I will have to take this, Potter. What? Said Harry, scrambling to his feet. Why? It will need to be checked for jinxes, said Professor McGonagall. Of course, I'm no expert, but I dare say Madam Hooch and Professor Flitwick will strip it down. Strip it down, repeated Ron, as though Professor McGonagall was mad. It shouldn't take more than a few weeks, said Professor McGonagall. You will have it back if we are sure it's jinx-free. There's nothing wrong with it, said Harry, his voice shaking slightly. Honestly, Professor. You can't know that, Potter, said Professor McGonagall, quite kindly. Not until you've flown it, at any rate, and I'm afraid that is out of the question. Until we are certain that it has not been tampered with, I shall keep you informed. Professor McGonagall turned on her heel and carried the Firebolt out of the portrait hole, which closed behind her. Harry stood, staring after her, the tin of the high finish polish still clutched in his hands. Ron, however, rounded on Hermione. What did you go running to McGonagall for? Hermione threw her book aside. She was still pink in the face, but stood up and faced Ron defiantly. Because I thought, and Professor McGonagall agrees with me, that broom was probably sent to Harry by Sirius Black. Bum, bum. Hermione, she's such a smart little girl. Always thinking of things. All right. The next chapter that we will read next week is Chapter 12, The Patronus. And now, we will discuss the chapter, including spoilers. So if you do not want to hear spoilers because this is your first time reading the book, or you just don't want to be reminded of what is ahead, then please turn this video off if you are watching a VOD, or change the channel. We will be back with not spoilers afterwards. Yeah. Okay, anyway. So, we've just finished the chapter, The Firebolt, and it is it's like a pretty calm chapter. I feel like watching the movie, I think they did a very good job of condensing this whole book And I feel like this whole chapter could be condensed so much. But it's just nice when you're reading a book to have so much detail, obviously, and get to be with the characters. Like, when you're reading the Harry Potter books, you're not just watching the action-filled events happen like you do in the movies. You're, like, seeing their whole year at Hogwarts. It's kind of cool. It's really like being at school with them, because she really does go into so much detail about their classes, about what the Great Hall looks like, what happened during the holidays. I mean, you really feel like you're going through an entire school year with them, and that's pretty cool. I like that about what J.K. Rowling has done with this writing. And just all the little characters that you miss out on in the movies, like Sir Cadogan. He's not in the movie, really. He might be, like, in there briefly. Actually, he might be in there very briefly. But, you know, you miss out on a lot of the details of that. Of course, Hermione is so intelligent, and she is, I believe we find out that she is absolutely right. Sirius Black does. He did give this broom to Harry. But, as we know, he gave it to him. I don't even like saying spoilers. I just don't like it. I don't know. I'm, like, afraid to say it, even though I already told you guys to change the channel if you don't want to hear spoilers. Because I just feel like when we're in the middle of the story, we shouldn't allow our brains to think about the end. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta fully live it. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. But yeah, it's just really interesting when you're reading these, because I'm like, Hermione's so smart. And I don't remember that part in the movie. It might have been in there, but it was just so fast. I just don't remember it. But she knew. She knew who it was from. She's so smart. So intelligent. Of course, just because she was right that it was from Sirius Black doesn't necessarily mean she was right that it's cursed or gonna do something bad to Harry. Because, as we will find out, things are not always as they seem. Oh, I want to talk about Crookshanks and Scabbers, because they never tell us. They don't ever tell us whether or not Crookshanks is an animagus. And that's something that we wonder a lot, especially in the books. In the movie, it's just like a cat chasing a rat. But in the books, it's almost like he's waiting, like he knows that rat is with Ron. He always knows where that rat is, and he's trying to get that rat. Like, it is his goal in life to get that rat. And it's almost like he's a little too smart. Like, sometimes he seems to hear Ron. When Ron says Scabbers is hiding somewhere, it's like the cat seems to hear him. Now, it could easily be explained by the cat being able to smell the rat, and just cats wanting to get rats in general. So, you know. But there's just some times when you're like, maybe Crookshanks is an animagus, and maybe he's trying to protect them. You know? So, I'm curious, actually, to see if that's something that, like, J.K. Rowling ever addressed. Let's see. Did J.K. Rowling ever say whether Crookshanks is an animagus? Crookshanks. Let's see here. No ads. Oh my gosh, I hate ads. You just want to read something, and they just get in your way. Okay. Crookshanks, Hermione's pet cat, was half Kniezel, as evidenced by his lion-like appearance, ability to solve problems on his own without aid or teaching, and clear dislike of an ability at recognizing untrustworthy persons, even if they are transfigured. In 1993, Crookshanks was purchased from the Magical Menagerie by Hermione Granger. The saleswoman from whom she had purchased him stated that he had been in the shop for a long time as nobody wanted him. Crookshanks played an important role in the events that took place on June 6, 1994, during the height of the Second Wizarding War. Crookshanks stayed at the Burrow. It is unknown what happened to him after the war, but it can be assumed that he was returned to Hermione. Interesting. He was purchased on August 31st, 1993 by Hermione Granger. Wow. I never thought about, like, the exact dates of when these things are happening. Because it's like a magical world, so I guess to me the dates didn't matter so much. Alright, under Hermione Granger's ownership, there's something funny about that animal. It heard me say that Scabbers was in my bag, and that's Ron, after Crookshanks' failed attempt to catch Scabbers. Hermione took Crookshanks to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry with her, and was present on the train when Dementors boarded in search of Sirius Black. Perhaps because he was half Kniezel, the newly adopted cat demonstrated the ability to detect frauds masquerading as animals, most notable of which being animagi. Before the start of the 1993-1994 school year, Crookshanks attacked Peter Pettigrew in his animagus form of Scabbers, Ron's beloved pet rat, when Ron took him in as he was looking unwell after the Weasleys' family trip to Egypt. Afterwards, Crookshanks sought Scabbers out, even attacking him in Ron's presence, causing the rat to seek hiding places. Crookshanks would even try to sneak into the Gryffindor boy dormitory to seek out Scabbers. Crookshanks got another chance at Scabbers during Christmas when Hermione brought him into the boys' dormitory, and that's what we just read. The constant attacks were cause for Ron and Hermione to argue. Early in second term, when Ron discovered blood on his bed... Okay, I'm not going to read that because that's gonna go into too many spoilers. I know, it's like, I told you guys there's going to be spoilers. I hate saying spoilers. I even feel regretful that I even said anything that I did, because I just like to keep that you know, the suspended belief. You suspend, I already know what's gonna happen. I read all the books, seen all the movies, but I like to suspend that belief and pretend I don't know for a moment. So what is a Kniezel? And where are these people getting all this information about Crookshanks? Because I don't remember that being in the books. Is it from one of the other, like, book things? Kniezel. Or Kniezel? Might just be Kniezel. Dude, leave me alone with all these ads. Seriously. I already watched Batman. Okay. Welcome to Hufflepuff. Thank you for the follow. Okay, so Ron said, what was that? Harry said, it's either a very big cat or quite a small tiger. That is when they meet Crookshanks for the first time. Okay, a Kniezel was a magical beast related to and in similar appearance to a cat. They had spotted, speckled, or fleckled fur, large ears, and a lightly plumped tail akin to that of a lion's. They were thought to have separate breeds like cats, and therefore each one varied in appearance. They made excellent pets if they liked the witch or wizard who wanted to own them. Kniezels could interbreed with normal cats and generally had up to 8 kittens in every litter. You found me! You will never send me back to Azkaban alive! Where's my wand? Vada Kedavra! You're dead. Okay. They made... blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they could breed with cats, so... Crookshanks is half Kniezel. They were required to be licensed. Some people, both wizards and squibs, made a living by breeding Kniezels or part Kniezels, such as Arabella Figg. One notable Kniezel hybrid was Hermione Granger's half Kniezel Crookshanks, who she purchased from Magical Menagerie in Diagon Alley in 1993, which was known to sell pet Kniezels. Kniezel whiskers could be used in wand cores, although they were said to make inferior wands when compared with unicorn hair, phoenix feather, and dragon heartstring. Pretty sure mine is made of dragon heartstring. I think that is one. What is in here? I can't remember though. I'd have to ask the wand guy. Ollivander. Okay. Kniezels have a very high level of intelligence and were independent and occasionally aggressive, and they had an uncanny ability to detect suspicious and untrustworthy people. They could also safely guard their owner's home because of their aggression towards certain individuals. Kniezels had an XXX classification by the Ministry of Magic if they were not interbred with another species. Wow, XXX. Watch out for those Kniezels. How are you doing today? Are you having a wonderful day? B66. Barely read it in that color. Okay. Welcome, B66. Hope you're having a great day. In 1832, the wizard Abel Treetops of Cincinnati claimed to have patented a method of taming wampus cats for use as guards over wizarding houses. And he was exposed as a fraud when they raided his home and found engorgement charms on measles. How dare he? Wow. There's so much. How do they know all this? Like, where is this information coming from? Probably Hogwarts, a history. They probably made that a real book. I don't actually have that, but it's fascinating. Okay. Crookshanks lived to be a very old age, but at some point between 1997 and 2021, he passed away. He might have passed away last year? Crookshanks is gone? Last year, he might have passed away. Wow. So, Measles have, like, special powers to tell if somebody is untrustworthy? That's interesting. And then what, they, like, try to eat them? Very curious. I feel like this was added later. Not, like, actual in the original books. But it's still fascinating. Okay. Well, my dear friends, we have read a chapter. We are done with the Harry Potter chapter, and I'm gonna switch games now. Just for a little bit, we're gonna play some Alice Madness Returns. So I will be right back as I get that set up. It won't take long. sake of organization, I'm going to end the stream and start it back up because I want my VOD to be separated from Harry Potter and Alice. So we will do that.